Italy never forgot. The defeat at Adwa in 1896 was not just a military loss, it became a national humiliation. Across Europe, powerful nations were conquering territories across Africa. Britain controlled vast lands, France expanded rapidly. Belgium ruled brutally in Central Africa, but Italy had suffered something different. It had been defeated, and not by another European empire. By Ethiopia. That fact haunted the Italian imagination for decades. Veterans returned home carrying stories of chaos and defeat. Families mourned dead sons. Newspapers criticized military leadership. Politicians blamed each other, and in many Italian minds, Adwa became a symbol of weakness. Something to be corrected one day, something to be avenged. Years passed. Europe entered the 20th century. Technology advanced, armies became deadlier. Politics became more extreme. Then came First World War. Italy fought on the winning side, but victory did not bring peace. It brought disappointment. After the war, many Italians believed they had sacrificed thousands of lives and received too little in return. The economy struggled. Inflation hurt families. Workers went on strike. Factories shut down. Street violence between political groups became common. Governments rose and fell quickly. Many citizens lost faith in democracy. They wanted order, they wanted strength, they wanted someone who promised to restore pride. That man was Benito Mussolini. Before becoming dictator, Mussolini had been many things: a journalist, a political activist, a gifted speaker, but above all, he understood anger. He knew how to turn frustration into loyalty. He knew how to make people believe humiliation could be reversed. He built a movement called fascism. It promised discipline, national unity, military strength, absolute leadership. His followers wore black shirts and used violence against opponents. They attacked rivals, intimidated critics, created fear in the streets, and as chaos grew, more people accepted him as the solution. In 1922, Mussolini organized the March on Rome. Thousands of supporters moved toward the capital. The government hesitated. The king refused to crush the movement. Instead, Mussolini was invited to form a government. It was a turning point. Within a few years, Italy's democracy was dismantled. Opposition parties were weakened, press freedoms disappeared, critics were silenced. Mussolini became dictator, but ruling Italy was not enough. He wanted greatness. He admired the ancient Roman Empire. He spoke constantly about restoring Italy's destiny. He imagined new roads, new colonies, new military victories. He wanted Italians to see themselves not as victims of the past, but masters of the future. And for that dream, he needed conquest. He looked at a map. North Africa already had European empires. West Africa was heavily controlled. Much of Central Africa belonged to other powers, but in East Africa, one name stood out: Ethiopia. Independent, still free, still carrying the memory of Adwa. To Mussolini, Ethiopia was more than land. It was unfinished business. Italy already possessed two territories around it: to the north, Eritrea; to the southeast, Italian Somaliland. That meant Ethiopia sat between existing Italian colonies. Strategically, Mussolini could attack from multiple directions. Politically, he could claim he was simply uniting territories. Emotionally, he could sell revenge to the public. Everything aligned, but he could not invade openly without justification. Europe still talked about international law. The League of Nations had been created after World War I to prevent aggressive wars. If Mussolini attacked without excuse, he risked sanctions or isolation. So he needed an incident, a spark. That spark came in 1934, at Walwal. Walwal was a remote desert outpost near the disputed frontier between Ethiopia and Italian Somaliland. Borders in that region were unclear. Claims overlapped. Patrols from both sides operated there. Tension had been growing for months. Then Ethiopian and Italian-backed forces confronted each other. Shots were fired. Fighting broke out. Dozens were killed or wounded. No one event at Walwal fully explains what happened. Both sides blamed each other, but Mussolini did not need certainty. He needed a story, and Walwal gave him one. Italian newspapers described Ethiopia as aggressive. Officials demanded apologies, compensation, recognition of Italian claims. When Ethiopia resisted, propaganda intensified. The message inside Italy became simple: we were insulted, we were attacked, we must respond. Meanwhile, Ethiopia appealed to the League of Nations. This was exactly the kind of dispute the League was supposed to solve: a smaller country threatened by a stronger one. A border crisis that could lead to war. A test of whether peace institutions meant anything. At the center of Ethiopia stood Haile Selassie. He understood the danger clearly. He knew Italy's military power had grown. He knew modern war was changing rapidly. Aircraft could bomb from above. Artillery could break armies at distance. Mechanized units could move faster than traditional forces, so he began preparing. Orders were sent across Ethiopia. Regional leaders were asked to raise troops. Weapons were purchased where possible. Defensive positions were discussed. Messengers crossed difficult terrain carrying commands, but modernization had limits. Ethiopia had brave fighters and large numbers. Italy had industrial power. While Ethiopia mobilized, Mussolini accelerated preparations. Ports in Eritrea filled with ships. Crates of ammunition arrived daily. Fuel, trucks, artillery, and aircraft were unloaded. Road construction expanded to support movement inland. Soldiers poured into East Africa. This was not a border reaction. It was a planned invasion. European leaders watched nervously. United Kingdom and France disliked aggression. But they feared another problem more. They feared pushing Mussolini closer to Adolf Hitler. Germany was already rearming. The balance of Europe felt fragile, so Britain and France tried compromise: strong words, weak action. Warnings without enforcement. Inside the League, committees formed. Reports were written, meetings were held, speeches were delivered, but every delay favored Mussolini. Because while diplomats talked, Italian troops kept arriving. Inside Italy, propaganda became relentless. Posters showed heroic soldiers, newspapers promised victory, crowds attended rallies. Mussolini appeared on balconies speaking of destiny, pride, empire, and history. He promised to erase Adwa. He promised to make Italy respected again. Many believed him. In Ethiopia, memories of Adwa inspired hope. If their fathers had defeated Italy once, perhaps they could do it again. But there was also realism. This was not 1896. Italy now had bombers, poison gas stockpiles, machine guns, heavy artillery, modern logistics. The next war would be different. By late 1935, the border had become a waiting line. Troops stared across harsh landscapes. Scouts reported movement. Aircraft engines could be heard. Supplies stacked higher each week. Everyone knew what was coming. The only question was when. That answer came on October 3, 1935. Without a formal declaration that mattered to the victims below, Italy invaded Ethiopia. From Eritrea in the north, columns advanced. Artillery opened fire. Aircraft took to the sky. Bombs fell. The long-promised revenge had begun. For Mussolini, this was the correction of history. For Italy's propaganda, it was destiny. For the League of Nations, it was failure. And for Ethiopia, it was a fight for survival. Italy believed the hardest part was over. They had crossed the border. They had modern weapons. They had aircraft, artillery, tanks, and thousands of troops. To many in Rome, victory now seemed inevitable. But Ethiopia was not a country that surrendered easily. Its geography alone was an enemy. Steep mountains, narrow passes, rugged highlands, long supply routes. Every mile forward became harder than the last. Italian commanders expected Ethiopian resistance to break quickly. Instead, new fighters kept appearing. Farmers left their fields. Warriors marched from distant provinces. Regional leaders raised banners and gathered men. Many lacked uniforms, many lacked modern rifles. But they knew the land, and they believed foreign rule was unacceptable. Emperor Haile Selassie worked urgently. Messengers were sent across the empire. Nobles were ordered to mobilize forces. Supplies were gathered wherever possible. Blacksmiths repaired weapons. Animals carried food through mountain trails. Villagers helped guide troops through difficult terrain. This was not only an army preparing, it was a nation mobilizing. Italy tried to use fear as a weapon. Aircraft bombed roads and camps. Villages suspected of helping resistance were attacked. Columns advanced with artillery support, hoping shock alone would crush morale. But fear did not always create surrender. Sometimes it created rage, and rage created more resistance. In the north, major battles began to erupt. Italian troops pushed deeper from Eritrea. Ethiopian forces gathered to stop them. Clashes took place across harsh landscapes where movement was slow and deadly. Dust filled the air, shells exploded across hillsides, machine guns tore through charging formations. Yet even under terrible fire, Ethiopian fighters continued advancing. Italy possessed superior firepower. That reality mattered. Artillery could strike from distance. Aircraft could scout positions from above. Machine guns punished direct attacks, but technology did not guarantee peace of mind. Italian soldiers were far from home. Many feared ambush. Many feared the terrain. Many knew this war was not unfolding as easily as promised. Mussolini grew impatient. He wanted headlines. He wanted speed. He wanted a dramatic victory to prove fascism's strength. Delays angered him. Every week without total success embarrassed the regime. So he pressured commanders to move faster, and that pressure would make the war even more brutal. Then came one of the darkest chapters of the invasion. Italy increasingly used chemical weapons. Mustard gas was dropped from aircraft. It spread over troops, roads, rivers, and open ground. Those caught in it suffered burns, blindness, and agonizing injuries. Animals died, water sources became dangerous, fields were contaminated. The world had already condemned chemical warfare after World War I, yet condemnation did little. Again, outrage was louder than action. The League of Nations protested, but protest did not stop bombs. And protest did not save villages. For Ethiopia, the war became a struggle against both armies and modern terror. Traditional courage could face bullets, but how do you fight poison falling from the sky? Still, they continued. Emperor Haile Selassie personally moved among troops. He encouraged commanders. He tried to coordinate armies spread across difficult regions. He knew morale mattered as much as weapons. If unity collapsed, defeat would come faster. If unity held, survival remained possible. Several Ethiopian leaders commanded large forces. Some launched bold attacks. Others tried to cut supply lines. Some victories were achieved. Italian units were sometimes surprised, isolated, or forced to retreat temporarily, but each success came at a heavy cost. Because Italy could often answer setbacks with air power and artillery, as months passed, the balance became clearer. Ethiopia had courage, numbers, and determination. Italy had industry, logistics, and devastating weapons. The war was becoming a contest of endurance, and endurance favored the empire with factories. Meanwhile, in Rome, propaganda told a cleaner story. Newspapers showed triumphant soldiers, crowds cheered speeches, maps displayed arrows of progress. The suffering on the ground was hidden behind slogans. By early 1936, Italian forces pushed toward the Ethiopian heartland. Strategic towns fell, roads were secured. Defenders were forced back in multiple sectors. The pressure on Addis Ababa grew. Inside Ethiopia, fear spread alongside resolve. Families fled advancing fronts. Refugees moved with livestock and possessions. Rumors traveled faster than facts. Some said the capital would never fall. Others feared it soon would. Haile Selassie now faced the most painful decision of his life: remain in the capital and risk capture, or leave the country and continue the fight internationally. Staying might inspire some, but capture could end organized resistance. Leaving looked painful, yet it offered a chance to keep Ethiopia's cause alive. He chose to leave, not because he surrendered, because he believed the struggle had moved beyond battlefields. It had entered world politics. In May 1936, Italian forces entered Addis Ababa. Mussolini declared victory. He announced the birth of a new empire. In Italy, crowds celebrated wildly. Church bells rang, flags filled streets. The regime claimed Adwa had finally been avenged. But conquest on paper is not the same as control in reality. Outside the capital, resistance continued. Patriot fighters attacked roads and convoys. Local communities sheltered rebels. Occupation forces needed constant patrols. Every valley could hide danger. Every road could become an ambush. Haile Selassie traveled to Geneva. There, before the League of Nations, he delivered a historic warning. He spoke of bombings, of chemical attacks, of aggression rewarded. He asked the world whether law meant anything when a strong state attacked a weaker one. Many listened, Many applauded, too few acted. His warning reached beyond Ethiopia. If conquest succeeded here, where would it happen next? That question would soon be answered in Europe. Mussolini had won land, but he had also exposed the weakness of international peace. Other dictators noticed. They saw treaties ignored, they saw hesitation rewarded, they saw aggression work. Italy's empire also came with costs. Occupation required troops, roads had to be guarded. Resistance had to be hunted, money had to be spent, lives continued to be lost. Victory was more expensive than promised. Then came World War II, Italy entered expecting glory. Instead, it found another disaster. Military failures mounted, resources thinned, and East Africa became vulnerable. As Italy weakened, Ethiopian resistance revived with greater strength. British and Allied forces attacked Italian positions in the region. Patriot fighters rose inside the country. This time, the occupiers were the ones being squeezed. Haile Selassie returned. For many Ethiopians, his return symbolized more than politics. It meant the nation had survived. It meant empire was not permanent. It meant foreign conquest could be reversed. By 1941, Italian rule in Ethiopia collapsed. The revenge Mussolini promised had lasted only a few years. What he called destiny ended in defeat. Italy invaded to erase humiliation. Instead, it created a larger one. And Ethiopia, it endured invasion, it endured occupation, and it rose again. That is why this story still matters. Because power can conquer land for a time, but it cannot always conquer a people. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to subscribe now, and join us for more forgotten stories history tried to bury.